In South Africa, we are now going to shift our focus and go to the global hemp industry. What is going on throughout the globe? What are the trends, and who are the key dominating figures in various regions? We will be dividing these regions into 4 regions, which include the global north, the global east, the global west, and the global south. So what is the global market opportunity? Globally, hemp has a market value of around 6.4 to 9.7 billion in 2024. It is expected to reach up to 21 to 47.8 billion by 2032 to 2035. North America and Europe currently lead, with Asia Pacific, including China and India, emerging as key producers and consumers of the hemp crop. For example, the significance of hemp in the global industry and in relation to our local industry, one big local retailer imported over 2.5 billion worth of apparel in 2024. Even a 0.5 transition to local products can present a 12.5 million immediate opportunity for the local textile industry and agriculture. Targeting just 1% of hemp fiber adoption could localize up to 150 to 250 million rand industry. What does this mean for us? This means that there's an opportunity for us and the Mpumalanga region to tell a story of establishing a proudly South African value chain and becoming champions of sustainable manufacturing. So let's dive deeper into this global context. What is happening in the global north, east, west, and south? In the global north, countries such as the United States, Canada, and the EU, France, Germany, Netherlands, Poland, there's a market share, they represent a market share of around 40% and have a revenue of around, and Europe accounts for 20% of that revenue as well. The main trend is sustainability. Major retail groups and manufacturing companies are looking for sustainable alternatives for their means to production. This means they are looking for green materials, natural fibers that can either incorporate or replace current synthetic materials like your PET or polypropylene and your different types of microplastics. This is why hemp is booming in the global industry, particularly in the global north. In terms of technology, by far in the global north, they have the capacity to ensure a consistent supply chain and a consistent quality. The one challenge they face is just climate and also arable land. This is the advantage that we have as a continent and as a country in South Africa, and not only that, Mpumalanga as a region. Regarding the global east, these are countries such as China, Japan, South Korea, India, Nepal, and Bangladesh. They account for 30% of the global revenue. China has cultivated over 38,000 hectares, and in 2024, they accounted for 35 to 40% of all global hemp. They are by far, in terms of experience and working with the crop, some of the most advanced, and in terms of understanding the dynamics of turning hemp into sustainable textile raw materials. The global hemp market regarding the global west. In the States, countries such as Chile, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Colombia, they have had an extreme focus on hemp feed as an alternative solution and augmentation to improve the nutrition content in the feeds that they give to their animals. Not only that, a big market on the textile side is the non-woven market, where home insulations are used and heavy industrial textiles are used and manufactured using the hemp crop. Companies such as I&D Hemp are one of the largest major players in the global industry, and they specifically have a focus on the non-woven market. They have experienced a recent growth and a lot of passes in legislation similar to what we have. However, the main challenge in the States is that they do not focus mainly on woven and knitted textiles. Their focus relies mainly on feed and non-woven textiles. This is where we have an advantage due to our capacity locally regarding textile mills. What is happening in the global south here at home? In countries such as South Africa and neighboring countries such as Australia, Botswana, Lesotho, Morocco, Zimbabwe, and Malawi, hemp has now a legal crop, and people are finding new solutions and new ways to cultivate and work with the crop. We represent one of these groups. In South Africa alone, over 1,000, now updated 1,400 permit holders exist in South Africa. However, processing capacity is a major gap, and it's important that through initiatives and this webinar that we build that capacity in order to ensure the sustainable development of our industry. A lot of our capacity is scattered and is not centralized. This makes it difficult for farmers to feel like they have a market to sell their crop to, and not only that, also for retail to trust that they can be a reliable supply chain. We believe that Africa, due to its different advantages, when you look at the global north, in countries you may have the advantage of technology and arable land, but one thing that they may not have is access to labor, which we have. When you're looking at the global east, they may have access to the experience and the labor and the climate, but one thing that they do not have is the arable land. When you're looking at your countries in the global west, like Europe and the EU, they may have the technology and the capacity and the experience and the knowledge to cultivate. However, what they don't have is the climate and the arable land to back that up. And we believe Africa as a continent represents a viable opportunity to develop the industry. And Mpumalanga, as a region that is strong in agriculture and manufacturing, represents a key region for the entire Southern African region. So what is the problem that we're looking to address by pushing this initiative? Between January and August 2024, South African textile imports increased by 8.6, totaling approximately $2.42 billion US. And when we think about the recent tariffs in place by Donald Trump, this presents another opportunity and need for us to localize our supply chains. There are over 1,400 permit holders in South Africa. However, there is limited processing capacity, and we believe the knowledge and the training and the skills about the hemp plant is still extremely lacking, and this is what we are trying to do to fulfill that capacity. South African retailers and manufacturers are demanding this product. However, they cannot trust quality and they cannot trust supply. It's up to us to develop together in order to ensure we can meet that demand. So what is the impact?
Matlatsi, sorry, we're just running over time, so if you can wrap up, otherwise, yeah, I'll eat into the break because I think we're only just getting going. But so please finish. But if you just to be aware that you over your time.
Yes, I'm about to wrap up. So we believe the impact for Mpumalanga is that over 500 jobs can be created in the province from the textile value chain. For farmers, guaranteed market access, improved diversification of income and soil health. For processors and agro-industrial partners, localization and reliable supply. For manufacturers, cost and input substitution. And for retailers, proudly South African products. We believe these can be obtained through focusing on the youth or various sowing initiatives or different initiatives focused on agriculture and social development. So the potential for Mpumalanga is that we believe by late 2026, over 150 jobs can be created through a vertically integrated processing center where farming, processing, and manufacturing is taking place in one province. We are Route Hemp Industries, and we are here to assist on that journey.
Thanks, Matlatsi. Thanks for a great presentation. So we'll, like I said, I want us to cover, all the bases. So probably we'll not go to the break if everyone is okay with that. If we run over, so I want to give all our speakers a chance to really, work through the subject matter. So our next speaker is Mr. Garth Strachan. So Garth is a former DDG Industrial Development at the DTIC, and he's also a consultant to the Project Management Office in the Office of the Presidency and the IDC. specifically on cannabis and the hemp sector. So Garth has a wealth of experience, especially in the value chain side of things. I just have to formally apologize that he was linked erroneously on our LinkedIn to the JET BMU. That's not true at all. So apologies for that, Garth. So I'll hand over to you now. Sorry, there's somebody that needs to be muted there. Okay. Garth, I'll hand over to you then.
Thanks, Jan, and thanks for the invitation. Good morning. Hi, morning, everybody. Jan, can you share so I can put up the presentation?
I've stopped sharing, so you're welcome to go.
Can everybody see the presentation?
It's not up yet, no.
Oh dear.
You did send it to us, I think. So if we can try from our side, if we.
Yeah, let's put it up on your side in the interest of time.
Yeah, okay, but you can start speaking while I dig. Sorry, man. I think I don't know if the team maybe has it. I saw it coming in. So I'll have it. There we go. Thanks. Somebody's got it up.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Jan. Just to underline the point that I don't speak on behalf of government or the RDC. I'm a consultant. I obviously try and participate in these webinars because they, as Jan said, performing an important function for spreading the good news, building information and knowledge, and dealing with knowledge and information asymmetries. I've been allocated 15 minutes, so this is obviously quite a high-level presentation. There might be a little bit of overlap with what Mahlatsi said. There's a great deal of devil in the detail, which I'm not going to be dealing with today. So all the early stage qualitative and quantitative research and early mover company data in South Africa suggests that there's a significant potential for investment, employment creation, and development of the hemp value chain in South Africa, and Mahlatsi spelled some of that out. By the way, the interest includes the fact that there have been a number of very significant global companies coming into South Africa, looking at the opportunities and the competitive advantages that we have in relation to land, climate conditions, latitude, soil, and so on and so forth. And so, I think the opportunity that hemp presents is one that's building momentum. I think it's strongly aligned with government's stated commitment to secure economic inclusion, diversification, and decarbonization, and I'll speak about that a little bit later. But somebody on a French delegation said at the end of the visit, we must be careful not to be stuck in activism, and that we need to be looking very strongly at developing the skills and the expertise. And the point here is that infant industry development, South Africa doesn't have a great record on it, stretching back to even before the dawn of democracy. It's complex and very difficult for developing countries, including middle-income countries like South Africa, who are, especially in Africa, trapped in resource extraction dependency. Often, and perhaps especially in South Africa, captive to vertically integrated large corporate agro-industrial companies and their supply chains, with high regulatory financial barriers to entry, and these corporations across the crop value chain and even into areas such as forestry, sugar, are reluctant to pivot to new crop value chains where there are higher risks and less certainty in relation to profitability. And then there are clearly shortcomings with respect to the provision of an enabling regulatory environment by the public sector. The sector development, I have to say, at the risk of stating the obvious, is unlikely to succeed without a purposeful, directed, evidence-based and collaborative sector development strategy. Next slide, please. So, yeah, colleagues, we all know, and Mahlatsi has set this out, that hemp is a whole plant use, but is generally a dual crop use, either stalks and seeds or stalk and flower. It's a rotational crop. It has carbon sequestration and soil remediation capabilities. This 5F framing actually comes from Friends of Hemp, so it's not my original thinking. Obviously, in other jurisdictions, they have different ways of framing the hemp value chain and supply chain, or the supply chain and the demand pathways and end use cases. I think this is a useful one. Farming, which is obviously all the seeds, the registration, certification, multiplication, distribution of seeds, the cultivation, the harvesting and the collection, and the upstream machinery and equipment, where South Africa has very strong adjacent capabilities because of expertise and experience and skills in adjacent crop cultivation. I suppose the point that needs to be made is that if it is easy, everybody would be doing it, and the kind of skills, the agronomic capabilities that are required in the farming of hemp should not be underestimated, which is not to suggest or to throw cold water on anybody's efforts. And again, as Mahlatsi has said, feeds and animal breeding, high protein hemp seed flour, pellets, shiv for bedding. And by the way, there are South African early mover companies that are already in the space at perhaps a prototype and early stage development. And then for food, high protein seed oil, flour and derivatives, milk, butter, edibles, and so on and so forth. There are companies in North America and in Europe that have started with food. There are obviously regulatory barriers, as we saw recently when the Department of Health regulated against this, and they've withdrawn that regulation, but it does demonstrate that regulatory enablement is absolutely critical. And then for fibers, again, Mahlatsi's spoken about this, but multiple industrial applications. And I've just mentioned a few: woven and unwoven fabrics, the built environment, and everybody knows what's already happened in South Africa, including the Hemp Hotel and other important initiatives in relation to hempcrete bricks, insulation, and panels for buildings, and then of course fractions and cellulose for multiple industrial applications and sustainable biofuel. I think the latter probably some way out. There are very significant regulatory hurdles, as well as the fact that there are other deep concerns, including in relation to the kind of volumes, the technological capabilities that are required, as well as, of course, issues like country food security. And then I think an area where perhaps the global leaders in the global north are much more advanced than us is the carbon and soil related opportunities, carbon capture, biochar, and carbon trade, the offset mechanisms, and then the soil rehabilitation, rotational crop, and then the soil remediation, the mine land, the toxic land remediation, and that's where the JET RP comes in. And I see their colleagues, including Caden Arnold, on this webinar, who have much deeper dive knowledge than I have. So I'm just setting out here what a value chain framing could look like for the purposes of designing sector development, government master plan for the hemp sector. And then, of course, there are all the side stream activities and multipliers in transport and logistics, tradable services, legal consulting, advisory, digital, track and trace, and so on and so forth. So I hope at a very high level that gives a picture of the potential of the sector, the many ways of framing the sector, but I hope that this is one useful way of framing the sector in terms of the opportunities, as well as all the multiplier impacts. And it's why government in the 2019 investment strategy, in the 2025 investment book or manual that was published by the DTIC, and it's why the JET RP has identified hemp for the Mpumalanga coal belt as one of 5 alternative sectors to coal mining and coal-fired energy generation. Next slide, please. So, colleagues, I sometimes burn my fingers in relation to the perception that I'm speaking on behalf of government, and I'm not doing it. So my understanding, and it's a personal understanding of what is happening, is that the Cannabis for Private Purposes Act, as everybody knows, was signed by the President in the last term of government. The Minister of Justice will sign off on the regulations. They have to go for public comment for a month, and once they are adopted, the Cannabis for Private Purposes Act becomes operational, and I'm not going to deal with all that kind of detail, but cannabis is removed, so to speak, from the Drugs and Drugs Trafficking Act. Hemp becomes an agricultural crop, with the exception of where derivatives are used for a medical purpose, so-called intoxicating hemp. I think it's Delta 8, 9, and 10, but I might be wrong. And then there's consequent regulatory reform to the Plant Act, which the Department of Agriculture is responsible for, and that work, I understand, is underway in that department. And then, of course, amongst others, the Foodstuffs Act, which falls under the Department of Health. Then something that's very often forgotten is that standards and conformity assessment is very important, and that obviously applies across the value chain in good agricultural collection practices, GACP, GMP, good manufacturing practices. Those are processing standards, but then there are very specific standards for all of those parts of the value chain, and they are specific to the end users. And I'm just giving some examples here of textiles, the built environment, automotives. And so the standards are set often or most frequently as voluntary standards for end-use cases in those specific subsectors. Some might be what are called compulsory specification standards, especially where there are issues related to health and safety. And so South Africa is likely behind the curve in relation to the standards and conformity assessment ecosystem. And my understanding is the South African Bureau of Standards has and is doing some work on that. And next slide, please. So we have to build out, as I think Mahlatsi suggested, the research evidence base, both with respect to applied research as well as stakeholder engagement research. So as everybody may know, a big piece of work was done through the DTRC qualitative research, which identified, amongst many other recommendations, that food, feed, the built environment, and fibers was an important starting point for investment and sector development in South Africa. And then the quantitative research is underway, being done through not a public benefit organization called the Localization Support Fund. And this work is on, amongst other things, the unit economic analysis across the value chain, obviously the cost curve, the input costs, returns on investment, all those good and important economic data. Quantitative data is absolutely important. And then there is work on the demand analysis and the demand measures. As Mahlatsi had said, we've got to create domestic demand as a platform, hopefully in the long run, for export. Sorry about that, colleagues. I'm not sure what has happened. Can everybody still see the screen?
We can see it.
Okay, I can't. That's my problem. Okay, no, let me make a plan. I don't know what glitch crept in there. The stakeholder engagement is very, very important. And so I am, and I think there are other colleagues in the public sector who are doing work in relation to compacting collaboration and working to support what in industrial policy would be called revealed early stage domestic champions, with a focus on inclusion. My own view is that we have to get demonstrator projects up and running, not only on the cultivation side, but on the processing side, on the product development side, and the product to market side, which in the end will be the best demonstrator of the viability and the commercial opportunity and investment opportunity in the sector. And so we have to do structured demand side engagements with domestic corporates. Again, Mahlatsi has referred to this in the textiles, foods, automotives, built environment sector. And then obviously we've got to engage with global companies, countries like France, Poland, Russia, China, and others never banned hemp, although they have banned cannabis, and they've been in the game for a long time. We can't rediscover the wheel. They have enormous skills, capacity, experience, technology. So we've got to look at technology partnerships and transfer. We've got to look at the possibilities for contract manufacturing, offtake agreements, skills transfer arrangements, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. So, colleagues, this has been a very high-level presentation within the 15 minutes that I was assigned. We have to develop a sequence, segmented and purposeful sector development program. And government, under the leadership of the Department of Trade and Industry, is doing that in relation to, I'm assuming, the updating of the existing cannabis master plan, which goes back to 2019. And then, you know, we are doing our best to ensure that government is supported in relation to regulatory reform, both with respect to cannabis and cannabis sativa hemp. And then obviously the critical question in our circumstances and given our history is meaningful inclusion to address the crisis of rural poverty. And my own view is that can only be done by a large-scale, commercially viable, investment-ready aggregation models. I am skeptical, if I can say this, to the idea that hemp can be aggregated with very small-scale farmers. And then project development support is hugely important in relation to taking early stage concept through feasibility or pre-feasibility, feasibility through to bankability and validated commercial viability. And this is complex in an infant industry because often pre-existing supportive data across the value chain doesn't exist. I see many very good ideas, but not a lot of very well constructed project proposals for investment either by the public sector or by private sector institutions, DFIs, and so on and so forth. Having said that, I think there is a big gap in our industrial policy toolkit on the demand and supply side, and that relates to the fact that perhaps as a country, and perhaps especially in the hemp sector, we need an early stage de-risked and concessional financing instrument because often the money required for the early stage setup costs, the operational costs, that kind of money is difficult to find. And then, as I said earlier, we need demand-side interventions for the domestic market development. So thank you very much. I hope I've stuck to the 15 minutes I was allocated. That's a very high-level presentation. There's a great deal of devil in the detail, so to speak. So I'll stop there, Jan. Thank you.
Thanks, Garth. Excellent. Well done. So, as you may have noticed, we skipped the break. I think it's more important that we cover all the topics. So I'm going to hand over, and let me just share my screen quickly. I'll hand over to our final speaker before we go into questions and discussion. So the next man to speak is Pivo Artemides, and well, passionate is the right word. I've met him recently, and he's certainly passionate about the topic, and he's got an in-depth knowledge, not just locally but also internationally. So So I'm going to hand over straight to you, Vivo. If you can, he's also the founder of what do you call it? HempoSapiens. So, Vivo, please, you can share your screen if you wish.
Perfect. Thanks, Jan. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're clear.
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, thanks so much to the MGCA for setting up this webinar, and to the previous speakers, Maklati and Garth. And yeah, good to be here. I recognize a lot of names in the room, so good to have the industry collaborating. And yeah, I think a lot of my work that I've been talking into with industrial hemp recently over the past few years has been about in some way creating awareness across the value chain, but also now working technically on some farms with pilot projects, and also bridging now internationally the interest of some international companies and financiers and capital institutions of how to invest in an emerging industry. Garth mentioned, there's a potential lack of bankable projects, and we've been looking at some global funds to try be able to get pre-development finance to capitalize it, and packaging hemp as an agroecological accelerator has really helped that. Hemp is a beautiful crop, and I think a wonderful industry that's yet to be fully manifested in South Africa. But finding a way to package it as not the silver bullet, but as part of the solution for a climate combative industry, as a community upliftment tool, as a job creation tool, as a green economy stimulator, I think packaging it as a catalyst to represent a greater set of tools that can come from the green economy is a way to support its movement in this space. And that's been, looking at international financing like impact investment funds, as well as looking at local funds such as Land Bank and other types of financial things like banks. How do banks want to invest in the support of the hemp industry has really been a bridge I've been forming. And yeah, so I think for today, some of the information I might skip past it. I'm also very aware of the time, and I believe it's in the best interest of the group to have some time for questions. So I'm going to jump straight into it. And Jan, if you could just let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, it's there. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks. So yeah, I'm working with Feed SA, who was introduced now in the chat, and also with Mpumalanga Green Cluster Agency and with Greenroot. So it's really good to be in the position of having a collaborative proposition for Mpumalanga. And what I've done is a conceptual note around how the just energy transition can become a catalyst fund for supporting the green initiative in Mpumalanga. As we know, Mpumalanga is a very interesting province because it has multiple different district municipalities and local municipalities, with some of the lowest income municipalities like Bushbuck Ridge, which is a rural municipality. But it also has this interesting border with conservation and ecology, and trying to find a way to get away from the tale of two agricultures that Wandile Seklobo talks about in these big, large-scale commercial farms, and integrating it into a medium to small-scale farmer cooperative style, which has been it's been a large amount of my work, is that how to actually get real inclusion that matters on the ground and supports livelihoods, as opposed to creating more extractive industries centered around large private commercial farms. So this is another way that hemp can be this bridge. So a vision of how hemp can transform Mpumalanga is to focus on empowering commercial farming, looking at industries, and also supporting small-scale, historically disadvantaged farmers whilst establishing the sustainable hemp value chain, looking at fiber, shiv, and seed. So another beautiful thing with hemp is representing the regenerative farming, and this can be unpacked as we go. So Mpumalanga is transitioning from a coal dependency towards a green economy, also from the forestry and timber industries, with some of the communities surrounding the areas of Glaskop and so on. There is a large push from the communities to be able to look at restoration sites that can support the livelihoods of the communities. So it's not just social employment fund like SEF work that's being granted to them, that they actually have some level of quality jobs and dignified jobs, and hemp can be that way of activating the industry. So looking at how the just energy transition can unlock catalytic funds to support this inclusive, economically viable economy. So why hemp? Hemp can be positioned as a socioeconomic upliftment tool for agroecological restoration and bioindustrial purposes. So this is through its bioremediation properties, its large taproot, and its quick biomass growth, and it's also its carbon sequestration properties help basically increase the amount of root biomass in the soil, and that increases the organic matter, which stimulates the mycorrhizal fungi that supports overall subterrestrial biodiversity. So soil biodiversity, and this happens on the post-harvest and crop rotation. And then looking at the biomass production, like I said, the quick early growth of it from 120 or 90 to even 180 days, depending on your early emerging plant, your early harvesting plants or your late harvesting plants. It has a large amount of biomass per hectare. And then your seed production. So it is recognized, people say dual purpose a lot, but I see it as a tri-purpose crop. Because it has these types of abilities to grow it to actualize an industry. So its agroecological value is that it can support agri-ecosystem management, and this is because it has different interactions with soil, the carbon sequestration, and also with the male plants releasing pollen. So the pollinating ecosystem agents is something I've been doing research on. In Southern Africa, we have 2,755 Afrotropical bee species, and a third of those exist in South Africa. We have the African honeybee, the Apis mellifera scutellata in the north, and the Apis mellifera capensis in the south. And hemp pollen releases white protein, which is really good for the immunity of pollinating ecosystem agents. And in some pollinating areas, like agri-ecosystems, when you're managing polyculture zones, you are looking at an abundance of pollen when other pollinating crops are nest. So it is an agroecologically supportive crop for pollen. So that's one way of looking at it. And then the bioremediation aspects, I spoke a bit into that. It has hypoaccumulator stress tolerant genes in it that actually help the absorption of different types of contaminants. There were studies done in Chernobyl that showed that it had a high uptake of cadmium, nickel, and lead that led to its formation in the vegetative stage of the plants. But now the question is, with contaminated or heavy metal contaminated plants, what do you do with that on a production level to produce products? People are looking at biofuel and actually being able to contain that, and are looking at the biochar, so using pyrolysis, burning it at a very high heat with minimal oxygen to see what type of carbon you can come out with, and what that does with the air as well. So if you are releasing those heavy metals again. On the carbon sequestration side, there are many other different types of carbon sequestration tools. And with the work done now with PDSA and the Save the Sand in the Kruger to Canyons catchment area, they have got a VM0042, which is the basically carbon capturing method with Vera for soil beneath ground, for carbon beneath ground, apologies. So that is the way that hemp can be packaged again as looking at a carbon sequestration tool, and then resilient agricultural practices such as the soil organic matter, the crop rotation, and also many things with the terpenoids as well, acting as pest resistance, and still to be realized in different other types of environments. So how I look at this is also hemp having 5 different types of anatomical parts of the plant, and these all require extensive market validation to create resilient economies of scale. So looking at 5 morphological structures, such as the fiber, which Maklati spoke to, the flower, the grain, which is obviously looking at, either for genetic breeding, as well as for food production, as well as for feed. And then looking at the shiv or herd, they use those names used by America and Europe. They are interchangeable. And this is primarily used for the construction industry and also have high cellulose content. And the biomass is for whole plant optimization with the long taproot. So different studies with different trials in different regions to support different offtake market demands with the right processing infrastructure, mostly looking at low tech processing infrastructure in the beginning, can support the right sequencing of the industry. So this 5-based segmentation framework was drawn from the KZN Hemp Indaba when I was there. And this is what Garth spoken to, and this shows the different types of ways you can have angles of entry into the hemp industry with different types of product development. So I won't speak into that for now. And then how I've come to realize it after many conversations and meetings and collaborative conversations with different stakeholders and so on, is framing hemp per each anatomical part of the plant with its low-tech, mid-tech, and high-tech application. So low-tech requires minimal technology, let's say, to be able to produce a product. The mid-tech, middle types of technology, not as high barriers to entry, and high-tech is obviously your high-end types of technology you need and specialized equipment. So each one of these, I'll let your eyes look through it, but each one of these requires a scale of production, the market demand, so the off-taker either being on the wholesale off-taker side or the final end product user, and then technology-driven solutions. As to each of these needs your types of understandings of, obviously on the technical side of farming, your types of retting methods you're going to be using, your storage capacity, understanding the plant tissue culture from the hemicellulose and lignin that's occurring in the plant, and to be able to take that into the processing side and to be able to address the market within the region. So it's commonly understood that from less than 120 kilometers, your processing infrastructure needs to be in proximity to the farm to decrease the financial barriers from the farmer to transport it to the processor. So each region needs to be, hemp farming region per se, needs to have its either micro hemp decorticator or a larger decorticator. So a big thing to focus on, I see as, is also it being, as much as there's a value chain, it being value driven. So being value driven is really being able to position hemp with being grounded in equity, ecology, and innovation. So with the types of industry South Africa's looked at, such as becoming part of, BRICS, and also looking at now the focus with the G20 in South Africa and developing a bio-based economy, is really being able to figure out how to position this crop that's a emerging infant industry, but to not repeat the same mistakes as being this large scale, massively privatized types of economies. Really being able to find a way to have inclusion and innovation that's accessible to different types of people in the country. So as I was reading, I hope you read on the right, but looking at social justice and community empowerment in the work I do in Bushbuck Ridge, really being able to understand from the farmer's side, what is the costs of entry to market, what type of technology do we need, and who's going to be an off-taker for that. And yeah, it might be seen as a small-scale artisanal niche industry as it starts off, but it is supported by large-scale commercial farms coming online. So as the economies of scale get right and the cost of input production decreases because of seeds, access to seeds, and so on, the small-scale farmers have a backbone of an industry to work in. And to see it in that way helps include the historically disadvantaged people in the country who are now heavily reliant just on subsistence farming. So looking at this and just, I think, fast forwarding a bit, it's really also about looking at the transparency, traceability, and accountability. So with some of the work needed to make it financially viable, there is a need to look at how small-scale farmers can be seen as having traceable commodities. So really from seed to sale, understanding their bankability, the history of farming, knowing if they have a banker account, if they're on a PT, permission to occupy, or on a title deed, and understanding what type of ways the small-scale farmer can become a part of this commercially driven industry. And then looking at, once again, indigenous knowledge systems. Obviously with hemp and cannabis sativa being for high THC cannabis, and industrial hemp being for more of the morphological, anatomical parts of the plant besides the flower, really figuring out how to get the balance right to look at indigenous knowledge with hybrid strains and localized genetics to be able to support the growth of the industry. So from values driven to value chain, what is needed to kind of focus on this? It is looking at a seed bank and genetics hub. This is why the cost of producing now at scale is quite large, and also comes with a high risk. If we don't have our own localized genetics that are adapted to bioregional microclimatic conditions, because it's a light sensitive crop, and if we import all those seeds from the global north, it's latitude dependent, and if we bring it in from Australia, it's also, we have different temperature heat units here as well, and different pests and diseases, like latent hop virus and different things that hemp reacts with. But localized genetics that are hybridized, that some of the seed trials coming out of ARC now that are showing different seed varieties that were localized by a few farmers, can really help position our IP. And from traveling now in Berlin to the European Industrial Hemp Association and meeting a few stakeholders around Europe, they also have a need for seed. So the EU also has a need for different types of seed to support different models. And that's why I think South Africa, another position as well as fiber, is also to really prioritize seed genetics. And they take a while to stabilize and homogenize, and you need your uniformity, durability, and stability. But really being able to look at genetics as a way of also unlocking a key factor in the global trade of hemp. So establishing a Mpumalanga seed bank for genetic sovereignty, looking at the regenerative cultivation model that focuses on inclusion and training, and the post-mining land rehabilitation. So various factors in Mpumalanga transitioning from coal, there are these post-mining or post-rehabilitation programs that mines, I believe, need to act on, and hemp can look at degraded land and be able to look at how that can be, through the organic root structure of the plant, revitalize it to create, once again, arable, maybe food farming type of land. For the harvesting and pre-processing infrastructure, with Maklatzi's images, looking at how these micro-processing units and processing units can really help position these co-ops. And then looking at the biomass sorting from fiber, shiv, and grain. And seeing what your types of fiber that you're coming on, the length of it, and being able to focus within each region of a different microclimate, what is the best way of focusing on hemp in that. And obviously, as I'll explain later, this is through reverse engineering the demand of the industry and figuring out the compliance standards that Garth spoke to with SABs and other technical product developers and manufacturers. So value-added products are looking at concrete and also insulation and bioplastics and green packaging for agro-industry. We're right now, with Maklatzi's locally grown hemp shiv, we're actually building on-site now rammed earth hempcrete bricks in Bushbuck Ridge. So, taking locally grown and showing how they can be used in these environments and actually improve livelihoods is a very key metric of how to support government procurement with budgets to be able to support the demand of the industry. So this speaks to the markets and offtakes, the local procurement through state tenders. With some of the work done, we're also looking and talking with big conservation groups in Mpumalanga about how they want to obviously support a green transition, and the Kruger 2040 vision, being able to support a green transition with hemp being a catalytic tool to support the green construction, because you get reduced embodied energy of the building, and also its life cycle analysis from cradle to cradle, and being able to minimize the amounts of on-site electricity demanding goods there, like your air cons and so on, because of its thermal regulatory properties. And then cross-border trade in SADC, with Botswana coming online now, and Zimbabwe have been running afoot for a while. There's also a need to look at AFCA, the African Free Continental Trade Agreement, with reduced tax tariffs between different trades of these commodities, because I believe it is time for Africa, and it's always been time for Africa, but really positioning local leaders and local companies in this will be important for the global industry in Africa to not become dependent again on a large amount of imports and so on. Maybe in the beginning few years, technical transition skills is needed, but really supporting an African first and South African first industry is possible, because there are a lot of expertise and awareness on the ground. And then just transition and looking at how to secure financing and microfinancing loans through blockchain, which is traceability, is looking at social justice. Once again, I'll just speak briefly into the post-mining rehabilitation, turning polluted lands into green economic zones, carbon sequestration, and looking at biomass and tokenized platforms. So the tokenized systems with the carbon credits and packaging that on. And once again, carbon is just a way of looking at a nature-based instrument to be able to look at changing the financial system, but really focusing on biodiversity credits, because subterrestrial biodiversity is a key metric for for the global movement now in the regenerative space. And we're looking at different blockchain instruments to be able to track these inputs in carbon. With ESG and the work coming out of the UN funding, and also with funding coming out of EU and the UK specifically, the ESG compliance is really good. And then inclusion for women and youth-led cooperatives and skills development. I'm going to move swiftly because there is not a lot of time left. So just briefly, the hemp does help address the key priorities and strategic interventions in the country, focusing on economic diversification, job creation, and environmental resilience. And really trying to be able to center, decarbonization and spatial inequalities as part of the initiative to focus on green industrial clusters is how hemp can come in, either through SEZ, special economic zones, where they have reduced legislation that you can actually go above THC or below THC, and trying to figure out where the burden of the THC compliance really sits in, to figure out how to actualize the economy with localized genetics. And then through some of the training with Feed and others, like what Maklatsi is doing at Green Route, I think is really also important. And then what's needed, you need, Garth spoke to this, a multi-stakeholder collaboration where it's about farmer groups and cooperatives. What is the level of farmer groups? Really, how are they approaching this as a cooperative? Is there technical onboarding? Do they need to know the selling of it? And really figuring out what the pricing issue is. What is the price they can sell it for that makes sense throughout the value chain? And this was speaking to the unit economics. And until there's a large, these growing pains are kind of stabilized, we will have a flux in the economic values because of the input costs changing around the genetics. But around this multi-stakeholder collaboration, it's looking at industrial manufacturers and processors, government departments, from local all the way up to provincial, and even national, if the contract or program can be seen in that way. It's obviously addressed nationally, but the guys on the ground don't really have communication nationally. And financial institutions and development partners, like I said, taking the journey on with financial or capital institutions from the beginning and figuring out how they could invest in this and what they need from their side. And for some, it's a very small thing. For one financial institution I've spoken to, it's because the hemp permit has a 3-year lifeline, and they need to wait for certain things to unlock, so they can't invest in it at this stage. And that's a regulatory thing that needs advocacy and understanding. But there are other types of impact investors and grant-based things through NGOs that can help push the industry in the beginning. Private sector and offtake partners, academic research such as University of Pretoria being online. TUT has also done a lot of work. UJ, University of Stellies and Free State are all looking at hemp, and I'm sure in KZN as well. And then community leaders and traditional authorities. As we know, traditional authorities have access to large amounts of land, but finding a way that hemp can be centered as an agroecologically supportive tool is important as well. Investing in the seed supply system, I believe we've spoken about that. And then addressing the supply chain challenges. I'll let you look through this as I go, but really it's the understanding of how to proceed with the pricing for the farmer, and that's related on proximity of the processor and who the processor's offtake is, or who the farmer's offtake is, and figuring out how to really reverse engineer that so that they're making a stabilized profit year in, year out, with the right amount of compliance and quality assurance is vital for this. Minimal access to markets, I believe that's been kind of addressed over the past few years. In the beginning, it was access to markets, but markets now are ready for hemp, but the quality they needed at and the time they needed at and the reassurance, come rain or shine, that there's going to be hemp next season is something they also very much need, and taking it from a niche product to a mainstream commercial product. And then secondary processing infrastructure, such as what Maklatsi and Green Route are doing at this stage. Resilient supply chain growth is really focusing on 3 critical success factors: is sequencing, and that's growing the right amount of biomass for processing for offtake market; industry demand stimulation, so finding out what the farmer's revenue is, and coupling it with other crops on a crop rotation due to its short life cycle to support resilience. And there are other crops where the yield does increase if it's rotated with hemp. So finding out what that price difference is between the increased amount of crop is to be able to substitute the maybe reduced price at this stage of hemp can really help support the farmers' economic resilience. And then once again, affordability. So it's not just the elite of South Africa who can buy maybe hemp bricks, but really figuring out how to, get the unit of economics or economies of scale right to make it an affordable product. And on the right, I just speak to what a demand-driven supply chain looks like and how to get real-time information transfer throughout the supply chain to understand how to support demand. So this, I believe, was spoken to as well. I'm just going to move quickly or quicker. So investment into agro-industrial infrastructure. So really focusing on how we can look at processing facilities, storage on different farms that we've been looking at, and transportation networks that can really help support and couple hemp into the mainstream farming industry. And then public-private partnerships, looking at government incentives and joint ventures. And this is something I believe that has happened in different provinces now. And then optimizing irrigation schemes in different farming environments, whether it's center pivot or canal farming or rain-fed farming, is different ways that you can understand how hemp is going to perform, and seeing those trials is really where I think this next season is going to prove the merits in South Africa. So unspoken to that. And then, the different types of manufacturing technologies, with hemp producing, it's tri-purpose focus. I think figuring out what the amount of biomass supply is for when it's growing seed as well, and figuring out if that model can prove right. Obviously, with different technical models, you're wanting very thin pencil-like fiber stems, because you can actually be able to bale those and store those with a bit of ease and process those with ease. But when you're growing with seed, you're increasing the lignin and pectin, which is the sturdiness of the plant in the lower third of the plant, and that doesn't help for fiber spinning. And also your harvestability of the plant changes, because you'll need a triple header, triple cutter. So I believe, focusing on these things and just wrapping up my section, it's really about understanding the business models framework for the farmer side. So either on smallholder cooperatives or contract farming for larger farms, and then understanding what the value added products can be for that, and figuring out, that stabilization of market supply. And going from proof of concept and pilot to scale is the next step for South Africa, and figuring out, the genetic seed bank and stabilizing those genetics for local purchasing will help support the business models. So I think industrial hemp intersects in 4 areas, being business and industries, biodiversity, communities, and leadership. And within those, there are these overlapping paradigms that looks at regenerative value chains, a socio-ecological approach, and sustainable socio-political relationships, and how policy and regulations is a key aspect. And even between these, finding out how hemp, can serve the resilient and innovative supply chains, have local bioeconomic products that serves a bioregional community or even an international community. And then looking at these nature-based empowerment programs, coupling in a large amount of finance coming in from the climate space, coming in from the green economy space, and these global funding institutions to be able to support it. And then looking at in communities and in farming and in the industry at large, how to build contextual and generational wealth programs. So I have a way that hemp can really be an intersection and a transdisciplinary approach towards actualizing an industry. I just thank the organizers of this event and everyone for participating and listening, and looking forward to taking next steps with everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Vivo. Thank you very much. So we've overrun, not slightly, quite a bit, but that's fine. I think what's important now is that we just give some time to the audience to ask questions, and maybe for a short discussion. We've got 5 minutes, so it's not going to do justice to it. We may overrun for those who can do that. You can hang around, so we won't shut it down over 5 minutes. So if you have a contribution to make, a question to ask, if I hope our speakers can also hang around a little bit longer, so that we can maybe give responses. One of the key questions, or the repeating questions, was, can we circulate the presentations? So we will engage the speakers and ask them, maybe they're not comfortable to share everything. If they want to give us a summarized version of what they presented today, that will also be okay. But we will try and circulate what was presented today, even if it's in a redacted format. So I'm going to open the floor now. If you can just raise your hand, and then we'll take it from there. Celeste, yeah? Celeste?
Sorry, there's a question in the chat, Jan. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, I can hear you.
My question is, for an average or potential farmer, is there a way to simplify the entire hemp development and value chain process so that it's easier to understand and practically apply, that would enable more people to take advantage of the available opportunities?
Ooh, okay, that's a long one. I think, can one of the speakers, I don't know, maybe Mahlatsi, you better positioned to respond to that one. I think you've been on the ground for a long time.
Yes, so one of our service offerings, I think maybe it's better if I just share my screen for just 2 seconds, so I can actually show what I'm talking about. Can everybody see my screen?
It's there now, yeah, thanks.
Okay, please just give me a second to share. But basically, one of the key reasons why we went upon going on a 1 hectare cultivation and processing journey from farm all the way to fabric is that we actually use the farm as a demonstration and training center. So we have a program called the We Train to Buy program, where we basically train farmers and provide them with a handbook that explains the step-by-step process from soil preparation all the way through to final fabric manufacturing, and also processing, how to primary process it as well. So one of the key initiatives that we run as part of the training program is that we actually want to offer offtake to farmers, because for us, our desire is not to actually act as large-scale cultivators. In fact, what we want to do is encourage farmers to cultivate and become their market access. So that is how we are looking to help establish the industry, by teaching farmers how we went about the journey, how everything works, certifying them, and also providing them with that developmental support to ensure that they produce successful crops. So that has been a large part of the work that we have done to ensuring that we can show the farmer how possible it is, and not only that, also learn exactly how much it will cost them to cultivate a hectare, and also how much yield they'll be getting and how much their returns would be for those yields.
Thanks. I hope that I'm sure that answers the question. Sorry, we don't have a lot of time. I'm going to take a few more. I see there's a Norm. Is it a Norman? I can't see the full name. Norman, yes.
Yeah, that's it. Yes, thank you very much. Mine is directed at Pivo. I would like to know what the coal mining companies, what role is coal mining companies playing in remediating the soil in Mpumalanga, because as you know, when you mine coal, there's a lot of heavy metals that go into the soil, and hemp is a very good, lead or heavy metal accumulator, and surely the coal mining companies can play a role in promoting soil remediation within Mpumalanga so that there's more land for cultivation for hemp. What's your reaction to that?
Thanks, Norman. Pivo, you want to respond?
Thanks, Norman. And yeah, there might be, I think the MGCA might be in a better position also to answer this. But yeah, I think the reason why there's a focus on it is because there is a need now for coal mining to transition to a green economy. And within coal mines, they have the post-mining rehabilitation programs. And hemp is a new crop, and it's a hyper-accumulator crop. And it has a potential to also serve job creation and industry growth. And I think the tests that are going to be done now by a few coal mining divisions and companies and organizations in Mpumalanga is on how hemp within different areas under rain-fed conditions can grow at a sustainable rate, and what is the type of heavy metals left in the plant either during vegetative stage or flowering stage from the types of minerals that it came from, and if so, what can you do with that, and what is the kind of health of the soil afterwards, and what is how good of a hyperaccumulator is it for different areas. And I think these trials can be also coupled with other types of post-mining rehabilitation programs that have been implemented all throughout South Africa. But hemp is just now serving as a potentially attractive way of using mining budgets to be able to support their post-mining rehabilitation programs in the provincial strategy of shifting to a green economy. And that's why unlocking this JET funding is also pivotal in that approach. Thanks.
Norman, maybe I could comment. Thanks from that side. We are also as the MGCA, we're partnering with the University of Pretoria, and we probably will include other partners over time, because it's a bit of a journey. It's not a sprint to apply for funding to support specific trials within the mining sector. So we'll start small, but it's not only the phytoremediation. I think that is part of what the plant offers, but I think for us, the initial focus will just be to focus on socioeconomic development opportunities. So there are two layers of trials. We need to start getting this plant into a value chain where it's sustainable financially before we can start also looking at additional functions, like phytoremediation, etc. So yes, we definitely will start working with the mines, looking at socioeconomic development opportunities, which is also something that's in a sense part of their liabilities if you look at the new legislation, but then also to move and try and understand what it can do. But it's a process. We're starting, we're applying, we're working with partners like the University of Pretoria, and we're certainly excited, but it'll be a bit of a marathon. Thanks.
Yanni, can I add
yes, sir.
That? Yeah, can I add on that to say, look, we are already engaging the mines, and yesterday I had a very fruitful engagement with the Mineral Council, but we also have Coltech on board. Some of the individual mines are already rehabilitating land. There are vast hectares of land that have been rehabilitated thus far. And I know three of the big five are rehabilitated. They have a program, and they've shown us the quantum of the land that has been rehabilitated. However, there is still work. I'm sure on what Jan is saying, there is work for us to look at the land use opportunity. Perhaps it's not every land that has been rehabilitated that would be suitable for your agriculture. Maybe we may have to look at this land for other uses, alternative uses. It could be your nature-based solution. It could be other things, of course. So there is a process within MGCA to do this. And what we're trying to do with this kind of webinars is not just to make this a talk show. We want to take this at a level where we could, at the end, it could culminate into a conference, and we'll bring all the relevant stakeholders, including the mining industry, to weigh in on this conversation, so that we all move, from one coordinated point. So we shall be engaging further, and we are looking at all these other aspects. So maybe that's just to add to what you were saying, Jan. So there are quite a number of other stakeholders. As we said earlier on, we are this collaborative platform, and we interface with the private sector, we interface with government and all other institutions in this regard, including communities. So in that final, or rather in that conference, at the end. We are hoping that all the stakeholders will sit with us and we'll all discuss on the table in as far as to how do we move forward with this industry. But of course, we want to see this industry taking off now because we've been talking for a very long time. So that's what is important about this series. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Hemp Solutions' hand has been up for a while. I don't know if that's a legacy hand. Otherwise, it's Joshua.
This is Johan from Hemp Solutions, and no, it's not a legacy hand. I've just got a very quick question for Fivo, and that is, in your travels and work across SA, do you have a dried mass yield that farmers can work in their planning?
Hi, Johan. Good to be connected. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, good to be connected. I don't have that specific unit on hand right now, but I think that warrants a good conversation afterwards, because we have some areas that have grown and harvested and they've come out differently, and then some seed has performed not terribly, but never germinated well. So really trying to get that stabilized model is what we're looking at. And the dry weight yield is, are you looking at that on just the biomass side of dried weight biomass, or of separate of fiber and shiv dry weight?
Fiber and shiv to me is a percentage of the crop. So you'll have a certain percentage of fiber and a certain percentage of shiv, and those, if your hemp plant grew well to your expected 3.5 to 4 meters, then that ratio will typically not change. So no, I'm not looking for that.
Okay.
I am looking for any proof of dried mass yield that farmers can work with. It's a question I often get: how much can we expect? And we've certainly have got our low road, middle road, high road scenarios, but I was just wondering if there's any specific values that you've managed to quantify.
Thanks. Can you guys take that offline? So I'm going to go on to the next one, because we're actually over time already. So Joshua.
Thanks, Jan. This question is targeted at Fivo. You mentioned briefly, you kind of rushed through it, understandably, but you mentioned briefly around, I think it was round hempcrete blocks coming out of Bushback Ridge. Can you just chat a little bit more about that, what that program looks like, and what the end market for those bricks are?
Thanks, Joshua. So just briefly on that, we wanted to showcase how hempcrete, using packaging it, so using cladding and actually packaging loose hempcrete as well as using bricks, can support rural economies and be a showcase to invest in infrastructure and look at how hemp can be packaged in the budgets for investing in infrastructure in different wards. So we've looked at using hemp bricks from Afrimat hemp that we basically bought, and we know some of the shiv maybe came locally or internationally, and then now we've used hemp shiv grown by Green Route, and we're mixing it with rammed earth, so with clay, as well as just using lime and water to be able to showcase different applications of it in different environments. So we're using it in a wellness building as well as in a kitchen, and then also in a classroom environment now, and actually using that as also part of this ecotourism package to be able to bring people in, where your cost of building, actually you get money from building a building and you don't pay to get a building, and that supports the programs we have in the surrounding villages with regards to food security and household food resilience programs, and also job creation in media and storytelling and so on. Hope that.
Thanks. Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mo.
Hey, can you guys hear me clearly? Okay, cool. My question is more, I guess, for Maklatse or everyone on the panel. But so you're on a call now and you have a bunch of industry experts, let's call them that, a bunch of regulatory bodies, some farmers, some processors. Kind of, what do you need everybody to do to get us from where we are, which is, let's call it infancy, to like commercialization? What role can everybody play to make sure that we kind of see this thing play out the way we would all want it to play out?
I think that's the question. Thanks for that one, Mo.
Can I have a stab at that?
Please, Garth, please go.
Yeah, I mean, the late Minister of Housing, Joe Slover, always used to say, on paper, you can do anything. And in my view, what we have to be doing is, as I think I said, getting some early stage industrial champions, as well as early stage hemp cultivators who are able to demonstrate commercial viability. Without investment, we're not going to be able to do anything. And even the best cook in the world, without the right ingredients, is not going to be able to do anything. And sector development is incredibly difficult. And so for me, the most important things that need to be done are, and I think this webinar has contributed, we've got to share information and knowledge as much as we can, and that's very important. But secondly, we've got to get early stage projects up and running, from cultivation to processing in the midstream, with the right financing instruments in place in order to demonstrate commercial viability. All the other stuff is very important, but until we get that, I think we'll be unable to demonstrate both to private sector companies, who must, at the end of the day, in many of the food chains, lead a demand-driven process, as well as to public sector institutions. And so I have to say again that I think we've got to collaborate very closely with the countries who have got 50 and more years in hemp cultivation, processing, product to market capabilities, especially in relation to technology. And so if it was easy, none of this, everybody would be doing it. It's very difficult to do. And I say that without wanting to throw cold water on anybody's excellent efforts, but we've got to, in my view, be focused on the demonstrator project. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Garth. I was going to also ask, if everyone that's still in the session, that you also email maybe to us, and you can. I think you've got my details now. Just with proposals in terms of what to address in the next webinar. And I think this question is what I would want, to be the key, theme of our next engagement, is to say, but how do we, and maybe with trying to have an understanding moving into that session also about what has happened physically in terms of production, what is moving, to what extent, and what is blocking the scaling thereof, and then to try and understand, this, we have a chicken and egg situation, and there's nobody processing because nobody's planting, and nobody's planting because nobody's processing, but the offtake is there. That's something that we managed to ascertain, but nobody's is moving, and how do we get this show on the road? So, and like Mr. Nkonyao said, we don't want to just talk. We want to stop talking and start farming. Dr. Lechaba?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Tsepole Chaba from Tshwane University of Technology, Product Manager for the Cannabis Hub. Mine is just around the issue of seeds. I just wanted to find out how far are we in terms of, ensuring that we we have a seed bank for, varieties that are suitable to South African conditions. Having considering what we've done recently in terms of, noticing that there's an issue in terms of, seed availability. Is there any form of support from government in terms of, fast tracking that process, and how can we aid in the process? And subsequent to that, also in terms of developing standards, for the type of hemp, industrial hemp that we're producing. Are there any type of standards that are, being developed? When I speak of standards, I speak in terms of chemical profiling. And then when you look at seeds, in terms of seeds that would have a certain South African genome in terms of DNA sequencing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lechava. Is anybody able to respond to that?
Yes, I can, but I'm sure others will have a different perspective as well. To the best of my knowledge, there are 3 seeds which have been registered but not yet certified, 2 under the ARC testing program, and 1 I think by Stark Airs, and then the information I have to hand is that a large number, I think, as Fever said, a large number of seeds are being imported. Early stage information suggests that there's a great deal of variety in yield, in the germination, and so on and so forth. And so the whole issue of seeds has to be looked at as a matter of urgency, because it's an enabler, and the whole matter of yields associated with different varieties. My understanding is that the University of Makanda has established a seed bank and is doing, and I'm not a scientist, genetic mapping of landrace strains. There might be other institutions that I'm not aware of, but I think this is a hugely important matter. And to answer your question, Jan, I mean, future webinars, I think we should be getting, which isn't the case here, government departments into the room to understand exactly what the DTIC is doing, because it's the lead department. We should be getting the Department of Agriculture in the room in relation to one of their institutions, the ARC, the whole issue that's been raised by Dr. Lechava of a seed bank, of seed registration, certification, multiplication is also an absolutely important question. Without resolving that matter, we are not going to be able to get the value chain moving in the right direction. Thank you. I hope that answers some of the question.
Well, thank you very much, Garth. I see no more hands, so I'm going to close the meeting. We've run over substantially, but I think it was worthwhile. Thank you so much, everyone, for contributing and for attending. And like we've said, we'd love to just, with this initiative, get the ball rolling and really operationalize and to see how we can somehow move from talk to farm and to farm at scale. So I think the choir might be a bit bigger the next time around. And a little bit more focused on, this was just in a sense an introductory overview, but next time we really want to talk about, what's blocking us, what do we need to do, like the seed, what are the specific interventions and who can assist us with that to take a step up in terms of scaling and to have meaningful impact. So Sunil, that will be the last question, and then I'm going to close the meeting. So Sunil, you put your hand down. So I've got Sipa Mandla. I'll let you go, and then we'll close the meeting.
Good morning, colleagues. Thank you so much. I just wanted to figure out if this meeting has been recorded and whether people will be able to watch it back at a later stage for those who were not able to attend. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think there was a problem with the link, so I've got to apologize. I think as Celeste said, she tried to do, she did screenshots, so that we couldn't do a full recording. So apologies, but we will, like we mentioned, we will engage with the speakers to see if we can distribute their presentations, and even if they want to redact them to a certain extent, but what they're comfortable with, we would happily distribute them to everybody that was registered on the link. So I hope that helps. Anyway, thanks everyone. I'm going to close the meeting and wish you a wonderful Friday and hopefully a much better sporting weekend. Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Jan. Thanks, team.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thanks to the speakers once again. They did an excellent job.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.